our Coach's Corner that happens every month on the third Thursday of each month at 1 o'clock. And it's really designed to help you have better conversations effectively. And from US Advisors, you're not going to get a tremendous amount of product training overall, but you are going to get a lot of concept training and understanding how do we best do insurance work. And what we effectively sell is the intentional integration of insurance. And what we found is that if you want to be successful in insurance planning, you have to do it on purpose. And if you have to do it on purpose, you have to make sure it's in your process, and you have to have a process to identify the opportunities that exist, to be able to position those opportunities, and then ultimately to implement those opportunities. And so big picture, that's what we're here to do, try to be a resource for you to be able to do those things. The topic today is this about cash value or death benefit? So we're going to talk a lot today about how you can manipulate or design a permanent insurance contract to be set up as a wealth accumulation vehicle or a wealth distribution vehicle. And so one of the first questions I always ask, either directly or indirectly, when we're talking about life insurance is this about cash value or is this about death benefit? And so in the next hour today, we're going to walk you through at least how I view this, some of the language that I use. I'm going to share some case studies with you, show you some real numbers. I'm also going to give you a sneak peek on what you can expect with some new life insurance changes that just went into effect as well. And I actually have a sample for that. So again, in that plan, we're going to talk about, why do people really need insurance? And then why do they want it? And in my experience, there's a big difference between a need and a want. And candidly, the people who buy the most insurance from me are generally those that want it. And I find that interesting, and maybe you will too. And so I want to delineate how I view that, the difference between a need and a want. And then really the focus is how do we create an asset? See, everyone thinks insurance is too expensive and it's a cost. And sometimes that might be true. But what I'm most interested in is how can we use the asset class called life insurance to create a non-correlated asset. And if you think about life insurance as an asset class, it has many attributes that other asset classes don't have. And if we can really understand what those are and who they benefit the most, and most importantly, how it fits inside of the context of a financial plan, then we can ultimately get consideration, which is, I think, what we need more than anything, is we need our clients to consider these structures. But in order to consider these structures, we have to have a better conversation. So I systematically over the years have had clients that have put $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, even $1 million a year into their life insurance contract. And what I can tell you for sure is that people don't do that because they love to put money in an insurance contract. They love what the insurance contract does for them. And if we just went to any client and said, you know what you should do? You should put $100,000 away into an insurance contract. We've already failed before we've begun. Right? We have to have a better conversation. And again, I'm hoping to help you steward a better conversation, or at least share with you how I steward these conversations, and hoping that you can take one or two things from me. I happen to believe that there's no such thing as an original idea, and even my ideas are not original. What I've done over my 20-year career is I've taken the language and the processes that I liked, and I dropped what I didn't, and I amended them to my own, so that what you hear from me is very authentic in what I believe and how I present. But at the end of the day, I've borrowed every single thing that I use from other people. And I bet a lot of you have done the same thing when you think about how you've become a professional on your side. So with that, I hope there's some value. Certainly I'll have time for questions at the end, but candidly, if you have questions at any time, I do not mind whatsoever if you just unmute yourself and say, hey, Rod, I've got a question. Not only do I not mind, I actually prefer that, to be candid. I don't know if many of you or if any of you have ever given a webinar format, but it is the most difficult format, in my opinion, to present because it's hard to get feedback. You don't always know that what you're saying is resonating. You can't always see people's faces, etc. So I'm here for you. So if you have something you want to talk about or you have a question, please stop me. Okay. So where I want to start here is, who needs death benefit? When it really comes down to it, who of our clients needs death benefit? And generally speaking, in my opinion, we've got three different types of clients that need death benefit. Those are families that are still growing their assets and eliminating debt. So why they need it is they really need to replace their money machine. Many, if not most of our clients' largest asset is their ability to earn an income themselves. And if that's true, we have to ask, what happens if that money machine goes away? How are we going to service our debt, make sure our kids go to college, etc.? So most people in that situation need death benefit, and what they generally need is the present value of the future income stream that they need. So they need the present value of the income that they're going to earn from now to retirement, basically speaking. Okay, so those are going to be primarily those families that have children, right? Secondarily, you got business owners. Well, business owners have a lot of need for death benefit. They need them for partners for buy-sell agreements. They need them for key person agreements, and also to pay off debt for liquidity purposes. So business owners, in my experience, aren't generally great investment clients, and you might have some business owners that you're working with, and they may not be very profitable relationships because most business owners are keeping their money back in their business. Well, I know a lot of you that might work with business owners like to keep that relationship alive and well so that when they exit their business or they get their liquidity event, then you can manage those dollars. And that can be a long time waiting from point A to point B for that to occur. And if we engage in some insurance planning, you might be surprised what kind of revenue can be generated from business owners who need death benefit if we just start talking to them about that. Then I would also say that families with children with special needs is probably the third bucket where I really see the biggest need for death benefit. Okay. As I described, most people who buy from me don't strictly need death benefit. They may want the death benefit. So that's why I have, well, who wants a death benefit? Who wants that? Well, it could be a family who wants to provide a legacy. You start asking clients what's important to them about their legacy, you'd be surprised what you might hear. So those that want to provide a legacy ought to consider whether death benefit could be effectively a way to do that, because of course that's tax-free, and in many cases it is also non-correlated to the market, and we can actually put it in an estate tax-free basis as well by putting it in an irrevocable life insurance trust or maybe having an adult child own it. So who else wants death benefit? Those that lack liquidity. We have a lot of affluent individuals there that have liquidity issues, right? They may have plenty of money, but they have to liquidate an acre of land, or they have to sell a building, or they have to advance money out of their retirement account, right? So liquidity is a situation, or estate equalization. Maybe they've got 3 kids and 2 are in the family business and 1 isn't. So again, where's those dollars going to come from? Well, some of those people might want death benefit. What I'm suggesting to you is that if you start talking to people about why they might want that death benefit, you're going to find a lot more opportunities and candidly a lot larger cases. The people who need insurance oftentimes have limited budgets. Those that want insurance often have a lot larger budgets, and we can affect their family, their legacy, and their businesses at a higher level, and we can make more money doing so. Families that are subject to the estate tax, that would be the federal estate tax or a state estate tax. Okay, we're not going to take a poll, but if I did and I asked you who thinks estate taxes are going to effectively go up, meaning the exemption coming down, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to raise their hand. So estate taxes are probably getting more onerous. Families with large qualified balances. I'm sure you've heard of the Secure Act. Well, one of the provisions in the Secure Act says a non-spousal beneficiary has to take their inherited IRA in no longer than 10 years' time. So if I were to inherit personally an inherited IRA, that would be probably the worst asset that I could inherit. Now, I'm not going to be upset if I inherit it, but it's not going to be a good asset for me because I'm going to have to take that at my highest marginal tax bracket. I'm going to have to do it over the next 10 years. And knock on wood, I'm in the highest earning years of my life and will be for the next 10 years. So that's going to be a very expensive asset to come to me. So maybe we want to consider, if my parents are in a lower tax bracket, perhaps, maybe we ought to consider using some life insurance to transfer as opposed to those that have large balances. Okay? And then families that are charitably inclined for all the same reasons that we discussed. Okay? So now cash accumulation. Who needs cash accumulation? I don't have anything on this page. My opinion is nobody strictly needs cash accumulation, right? And so guess what? A lot of accumulation structures end up not being placed in the industry because who needs that? They don't need it. But I'll tell you what, our best clients come from those that want cash accumulation. So who wants cash accumulation inside of an insurance contract? Well, it'll be those that don't qualify for Roth IRAs or have maxed them out. Right? A Roth IRA, in my opinion, is the single most powerful vehicle that people can put money in anywhere. Okay, it hurts me every year, but I fund a Roth 401k, and it hurts me every year to do that because I don't get that tax deduction. But I believe very strongly in the Roth component. But Roth has a lot of limitations. So you may have clients that are limited or maybe have already contributed and maxed out, and those are people that might want to consider an accumulation structure. Those that believe tax rates are going to be higher in the future than today. Again, if I did a poll, I mean, are taxes going up? I think they have to go up, right? And so again, that whole idea is going to be, if taxes are going to go up and I've got all my money in taxable accounts, what is that going to mean to me? Other individuals would be those that max their qualified plan. You probably have some clients, and they may even be a physician that has maxed out their qualified plan, so you put a cash balance plan in place for them, which made perfect sense. And that cash balance plan allows you to put $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 away on a pre-tax basis, and the client is really happy. And you know what? I'm happy that those things exist as well. But that same client may have another $50,000 a year that they would want to put into that plan. So if you have any clients that would put more money in their tax deductible plan but can't, those are people that should consider whether or not an accumulation structure should be put in force for them using life insurance. Okay. So effectively, in summary, relative to death benefit or cash value, what I really want to do is I want to describe to you and the clients, which I'm going to do next, that life insurance can really be an asset, and it can be an asset that has a place in a portfolio. And I want to show you what that place is, and I want to show you how we can reduce the costs of insurance as much as possible so this asset is efficient as we can. And so if you think about this, when you're solving for a death benefit need, what you really want to do is you want to pay the least amount of money for the most amount of coverage. That's what term insurance is. Term insurance is the best way to get the most death benefit for the least cost. What's the problem with term insurance? It ends on us. It's designed to terminate before we do. We bought a 10-year or 20-year or 30-year level premium, or we had an increasing renewable term, and it got too expensive. Well, we utilize what I call guaranteed universal life contracts. So secondary death benefit contracts that guarantee death benefits out to 100 or age 120. But what I want you to hear is when we're solving for death benefit, we want to give the insurance company as little as possible. That's the strategy. However, when we want to contribute for accumulation, we want to flip that on its head. Okay, when we want to use it for accumulation, what we want is the lowest death benefit allowable by IRS law with a maximum contribution. And we want to do that because we want to mute or minimize the insurance costs so that we can maximize our cash value. And I'm going to show you what I mean about that. So I'm going to toggle here in between this and a couple of handouts and illustrations that I have. Okay, so this is a very simple term versus permanent insurance chart that I use. Okay, I think I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, it's not fancy, but I use this almost with everyone certainly anyone that I'm going to describe an accumulation strategy to, I'm going to use this. But I'm using this all the time because I want them to conceptually understand what life insurance is. So this is term insurance versus permanent insurance. This side is dollars, how expensive it is. And this side is age, how old it is, how old you are, how a person is. Right here is cost of insurance. So if you look at life insurance in its purest form, it's called annual renewable term. An annual renewable term has a cost every year, and every year it goes up as we get closer to life expectancy. That's what this line is. So annual renewable term, it gets more expensive every single year, which means it's the cheapest way to buy it today, the most expensive way to buy it over your lifetime. Most people who buy term insurance don't buy term insurance with annual renewable term. They generally buy it in a 10-year increment or a 20-year increment, or here a 30-year increment. Notice that each time that we lock in that rate lock, it costs more, right? What I've described to you is when we're talking about wealth transfer, we can't really use term insurance. And the reason we can't use term insurance is it's designed to terminate before the client is. We need to make sure it lasts forever. So lasting forever is this guaranteed universal life. Now notice that that's going to cost more than a 30-year policy, more than a 20-year policy, et cetera. But this is the line that we want to fund when we're transferring wealth. And I'm going to show you what that means in a real case study in just a couple of minutes. Okay. Now at the top of this chart, you're going to see the IRS code 7702. So the IRS code 7702 has rules and definitions for what makes a life insurance contract a life insurance contract. And they have an overall limit to the amount of money that you can put into a contract. And if you violate that limit, it becomes a modified endowment contract, which is what I'm illustrating with this dotted line. If you put $1 more, it becomes a modified endowment contract, and we lose the tax-favored nature of this policy, okay, or some of the tax-favored attributes. If we keep it under this MEC line, then what we've done is we're followed the rules, and we can put as much to that line without going over and be able to take all of this out on a tax-free basis through policy loans or through death. And what makes this work is that any number that gets put in above this cost of insurance gets invested in this cash value, right? So the way a permanent insurance product works by design is we want to stuff in as much as we can, have them take the cost out, and then invest the rest either in a fixed account, like maybe a whole life contract or a universal life, or an indexed policy, which is what I tend to favor. Those that want these types of strategies generally have large positions in equity. And so being able to diversify away from the equity market and to be able to diversify away from taxation by using a tax-free asset if we follow some rules. So I tend to favor indexed, but understand you got 3 different engines effectively that can run one of these: a fixed engine, a variable engine, or an indexed engine. And again, the strategy is to put as much in as you can. So here's a sneak peek for 15 minutes from now. This rule, this 7702 change, just made a change in December. So part of the Appropriations Act is allowing consumers to put more money in than they could before under Section 7702 without becoming a modified endowment contract. It's very cool. It's very special. It's got me very excited. I know exactly one company right now that has a new product in this space, and it's Symetra. And I'm actually going to show you an example that really wasn't one that we wrote. George, you don't know this, but a friend of mine just placed a Symetra 7702 and gave me a spreadsheet, and I want to share that with you guys. It's really incredible. So a little bit of a sneak peek on this. So when we're talking about life insurance as an asset class, and this is how it works conceptually, what I want to get the client thinking about and what I want to ask them about and maybe even show them right here is, where are your assets? Okay. Now this should be compliance approved at Securities America. It certainly was at the time we put it together. I don't know if I have a date on here. So like anything, if you're going to use this with a client, make sure that you get it approved. But it was at least at one point approved from Securities America. So this sheet is kind of a cool sheet. It's just a conversation starter. Well, where are your assets? So when you look at all of your assets, how many of them are in a tax now bucket, right? Savings account and checking account. You know what those accounts are? Those are accounts, including CDs, that are the losing money safely accounts, right? We're earning almost no interest. We have inflation eroding. To the extent we earn any interest, it's taxable to us, and it's taxable now. What about tax later? Most of our clients have the majority of their money in tax later buckets, okay? And that's appropriate. I'm not saying that's bad. This used to say tax-free, and Securities America said, you can't say that. You can say tax advantage, and that's how we got this approved. And so tax advantage, you've got Roth IRAs, municipal bonds, 529 plans, and universal life contracts effectively. And so by talking to our clients, the second piece of this is we can actually inventory these. Now, you may or may not need these. Most of you are probably doing financial plans. You have some sort of fact finder or some way to capture all of this. So again, it's just a tool that we have, but I think the value of this tool is in the conversation. Because if we have little to nothing in the tax advantage bucket, the 2 questions that come to mind are, well, why do we have almost nothing in there? And then secondly, well, what are our options? So if we have nothing in there and we qualify for a Roth IRA, well, that's a pretty easy recommendation. We should start funding a Roth IRA. But if we don't qualify for the Roth IRA, then what? Well, should we consider municipal bonds? I think we should consider everything. What's the problem with municipal bonds? Probably pretty low yields, right? I'm not saying we shouldn't be in them. I'm saying let's talk about it. What are our options? 529 plans. I'm a big fan of 529 plans. I do think you can have too much money in 529 plans, right? I'm a fan of these things. But what I see happen is people ignore the insurance asset class, and that's what I'm imploring you not to do. Don't ignore the insurance asset class, and this is kind of how you can talk about this. So let's talk a little bit about taxes. So again, I want to talk to our clients about taxes. Okay, I'm going to go through some case studies in a minute, and I'm going to show you our internal rates of return that are tax-free, but I don't know if you ever looked at this. I want to show you this. Top federal tax brackets and regular income and capital gains since 1960. Okay, so what we see here is you've got the top rate on regular income. So take a look in 1944 and 45. We had a 94% top marginal tax bracket for any individual that was earning more than $200,000 in that year. Now, I recognize that that's probably about $1 million today and maybe even more, but could you imagine being that type of earner and have to pay 94% on the next incremental dollar? I mean, that just blows my mind, right? That's wartime. I doubt that we're ever going to be there again, but this is the history. This is where we were, okay? Look at in the 70s, 70% above 215. Now, again, that's probably 400,000. That's probably 500,000 of income today, okay? But still, could you imagine paying 70% of your income on your next marginal dollar? That's a big number. I don't believe we're going to get that high. I don't, but that's where we were. I don't know where we're going. Okay. Now this chart needs to be updated because you see it stops 2011 and beyond, but where are we? We're in the top, we're still in the 30s. Okay, so if you look at this and you look at this historically, we're in the 30s right now. Historically, we are in the lowest, almost the single lowest spot ever. Almost. We've got a couple years in the 25s, 15 that first year. So what I would suggest to you is that I don't know where taxes are going to go, but I think we're historically in a pretty low environment. And our best clients, those that want these things instead of specifically need these things, one of their biggest costs, if not their single biggest cost, is the cost of taxes. And as cost goes up, considering alternative asset classes that are non-taxable becomes that much more important. And I know I'm dealing with a lot of math people here, right? But we're really talking about taxable equivalent yields. So if we can get a 5% return on a tax-free basis and we're in a 38% tax bracket, we need to get 8% to pay taxes to get that. Look at this chart. It only goes to 40%. What if our top marginal tax brackets start approaching 50%, 55%? And then you add state. Okay, I do think that we could approach 50%. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. What I do know is as taxes go up, the insurance asset looks better on an equivalent basis. And that's what I really want you to hear is that let's consider whether these things make sense for you personally or for your clients, okay? And so I want to share with you a couple of wealth transfer profiles that I want you thinking about as I go into case studies. So this is a wealth transfer profile. Again, we've talked a little bit about this, but who might want this? So here's some individuals that have 50,000 or more that they want to pass on in some way, shape, or form. Could be in savings, it could be in a CD, could be in a qualified account. If they have money that they're likely to outlive, we should consider one of the most powerful transfer vehicles in the world called life insurance, which passes at the exact time that you need it on an income tax-free basis. And some of the returns you can get can really be outstanding. And again, I keep teasing you with the case studies, and I'm coming to those in a second. Next, this is the distribution planning. So this is that we're going to accumulate money, but we want to be able to distribute it very efficiently in retirement. And that's why we call it distribution planning. So one of the downsides to using a life insurance contract for accumulation and ultimately to distribute income is that you generally need a good 15-year runway to overcome some of the acquisition costs for insurance. And I'm going to start sharing that with you as well. So generally, you're going to be dealing with people between 30 and age 55, usually. So they have at least a 15-year horizon. And usually those people, again, have already fulfilled or maximized what they can put away on a tax-deductible basis. And now we need to consider what we can do on a tax-free basis. One thing that should be on here that isn't is those with brokerage accounts or even funding non-qualified annuities. What I find is that many advisors will default to a brokerage account or a non-qualified annuity, both of which have very, very good reasons to be used. But what I would suggest to you is some money that is in those accounts, if appropriately thought about, maybe ought to be in a distribution or accumulation bucket using a life insurance because, again, of the tax-free nature. So I think by default, those extra dollars outside of the retirement account end up in those two kind of accounts, and they don't get consideration for the insurance account. And that's really what I'm trying to convey to you today. Anybody have any questions or comments quickly? I'm going to take a quick drink here. Okay, let's hop back to my PowerPoint for a minute, and let's just keep it here for a minute. So if we're going to start having this conversation, if we identified that person, and I already shared with you some of those, here's some tips for, again, bringing it up. I think the best question you can ask is, what's important to you about your legacy? How do you feel about taxes? If you just ask those two questions and be quiet, you're going to learn a lot about clients. Okay? You're going to find out they don't care about legacy. You're going to find out it's really important. Okay? Whichever way that is, we want to know that. And if legacy is not important, then there's probably not much to talk about. But if it is very important, and then we ask them, well, how do we feel about taxes? I'm sure many of you have asked your clients how they feel about taxes. That can be a fun conversation. Because some of them have real strong opinions. Well, let's understand what those are. Our job globally is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest. And in order to motivate them, we need to know what does motivate them. And so I think asking them those two questions makes a lot of sense. Do you see any value in having a guaranteed, non-correlated, and income tax-free asset available to your heirs? Boy, that sounds leading. Well, what do you mean? Well, what if we could put together an asset that was non-correlated to the market and income tax-free to your heirs and fully guaranteed by a large insurance company? Is that something that you would like to consider or learn more about? Well, yeah, we have to learn more about it, don't we? We don't have to place insurance ever, 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 ever. I do believe we always have to consider placing insurance. Okay. And if we know what we have to contribute, and here's the beauty of it, if we know what the premium is and we know what the death benefit is, then we can determine whether we have a good deal or a bad deal by looking at the internal rate of return. Okay, and that's where I'm going to show you next. And then I would be asking them where your assets currently at, back to that sheet that I showed you. Do you have any money that's in the tax advantage bucket? And if not, let's consider what that could potentially mean. Okay. So here's our first case study on death benefit. So this is a 70-year-old female, and we are showing a $10,000 annual contribution. This could be from an RMD, could be from cash flow, could be repositioning that asset from a brokerage account or an annuity. It could really be repositioning from a savings account. It could be from anywhere. But the fact is that we're going to contribute $10,000 a year. And I've run and showed you both standard and preferred rates. So at $10,000 a year for the 70-year-old female, we can buy $364,000 of death benefit at a preferred health class, and we can buy $326,000 at a standard health class. And so now the question is that a good deal or is that a bad deal? Because I'll tell you one thing, $10,000 is a lot of premium for an insurance product that I don't need. And so a lot of times we're done right there, done. Why is grandma putting an insurance product in place? Because grandma doesn't need insurance. And the answer is, I agree, but grandma might want insurance because she told me that legacy was important, and she understands the cost of taxes on the assets that she has, and she understands that this asset class is payable, guaranteed, non-correlated, and income tax-free to the heirs. She understands that guarantees mean guaranteed based on the claims paying ability of the company. And I know all of you advisors are very, very well versed on what guarantees mean in our world. So now we have to look at internal rates of return. Remember, she's 70 years old. So if she got a preferred contract, then 10 years into this passes away. So now she's put $100,000 into this contract, but she's got $364,000 back out. Well, that represents a 22.71% return. That's a major equity return with no equity exposure and guaranteed. Now, to be fair, she's been underwritten for this at preferred rates. So the likelihood of her dying in 10 years is probably pretty low. So says who? The professional risk manager and professional money manager called the insurance company. Well, what happens if it's 15 years? She's got to put $50,000 more in, right? Her contribution keeps going up. Her ending value stays the same. So 20 years, 5.42, 5.41. So now she's 90 years old. So now we have an asset that's guaranteed to produce no less than 5.41% return over 20 years. Okay, well, what if she lives longer than that? Well, here's 25. I bet a lot of you are running your financial plans out to age 95. Okay, so if she goes out to age 95 and passes away, this asset that everyone thought she didn't need, was too expensive and shouldn't insure grandma, returned to her heirs 2.78% on an income tax-free basis. That's not the best number I've ever heard of in my whole life, but that's a pretty darn good return for a 70-year-old to give a 25-year return guaranteed at 2.78 tax-free. If we had a product that wasn't called life insurance that I could offer to you right now that gave you a 25-year return of 2.78% tax-free, I'm wondering if you would have any of your clients' assets in that. And I think the answer is yes. If I had that kind of asset, I probably wouldn't be on this webinar with you because there'd be a line outside my door. Okay. If I had a 20-year asset at 5.41 that was guaranteed, non-correlated and income tax-free, how much of your portfolio would I be getting? So without being rude, I think a lot of why I'm not getting this is because it's life insurance. And I don't want that life insurance, and it's too expensive, and grandma doesn't need it, which is why I talked about, well, grandma might want it. And now if we start talking that way, now we can agree, and we're not fighting. You don't need it, but you might want it. And even if you don't want it, that's okay. Why don't you become educated about it? Would you like me to educate you? And if we educate them, this is what we would educate them on. Now, in fairness, a lot of 70-year-olds will not get a preferred rate, will they? So I ran some standard numbers as well, and you can see that they came down. Look at that 25-year number, 2%. Okay, is that a great number? No. Is that a failure? I don't think that's a failure, especially if she wanted to transfer the money. That also means that $326,000 in cash is going to be paid to her beneficiaries probably 2 to 3 days after her death. And is there any value in having cash? Right? And I think that there is. And that's the kind of conversation that I would suggest that you have. Okay. Let me show you. I want to show you the illustration for this. This thing is like taking over my machine a little bit, so forgive me. Let's just get rid of this. Okay, so here's that first one at preferred. Female age 70 preferred. This happened to be protective. Here's our $364,000, our $10,000 annual premium. Look what happens if she dies in year one. The likelihood of her dying in year one is very small, but it's possible it could happen. And you know what? If we have 1,000 70-year-olds put this in place, one of them probably will go in the first year. Okay, so everyone thinks insurance is expensive and a bad deal. Well, she has to pass away to get this really good deal, and nobody wants this. But look at that return, 3,500% return. We can't do anywhere near that in your portfolios. Look at over 10 years. If she dies within 10 years, I can confidently tell you that this will be probably the highest performing asset in her entire portfolio, right? Do we have a 70-year-old invested in an 80-20 equity to bond portfolio? Probably not. We're probably targeting a 6 or 7% return for this person, I'm imagining, okay? 6 to 7% return that's taxable for this person, okay? My 15-year number is 10.47, tax-free and guaranteed. That's higher than an equity return over 15 years without being in the market, okay? I would suggest to you that it takes 20 years for you to take this $10,000 and invest it in your portfolio in a 60-40 blend to achieve a 6% return that's taxable. I would contend to you that this asset class will outperform something in the market for this client over 20 years. And that's what I think is very valuable. And I like the word and. And so sometimes when we present this, they go, yeah, that makes sense, but I still want to keep money in the portfolio. Well, that's beautiful. Maybe we should take this $10,000 and let's make it $5,000. And then we'll take this death benefit and we'll cut it in half because now we're diversifying. And so what I really want you to hear is you can diversify your client's portfolio by including insurance, and you might not even think of it that way. I promise you your client doesn't think of it that way. And I promise you your client's not going to come to you and go, you know what, I was thinking about it. I think I need to diversify and I need to use some insurance to do it. If they come to you wanting to talk about insurance, there's a 90% chance that they're sick. I don't mean to be rude. It's been my experience. There's a 9% chance somebody they know just got sick or died. And there's a 1% chance, if that, that you're going to be able to implement something beautiful for them because they just happen to be educated and wanted to bring that to your attention. We need to bring it to our clients' attention. They don't understand this. And with respect, there's probably some people on the call who don't understand this. And I'm not trying to indict you, I'm trying to help you, because when we use this right, it can be very, very, very powerful. Okay. So let me move out of that one. Here is the regular one. So that's the standard non-tobacco. So it's the same story. Our 10 grand, there's our 326 and our returns. So again, here, we're probably not quite 20 years. Remember that last one was, I think, 5.47 over 20 years. So it's not quite as good. But again, part of why this can be good is that you have to qualify for it. And so as you're talking about this, you go, listen, if this makes sense, what we ought to do is solidify the pricing structure and get through the underwriting process without obligating you. Because if we can solidify whether or not you'll qualify for this, then what we can do is we can make a final determination after that. And let's not write checks until we do. And by the way, a lot of times they want to think about it, and that's appropriate. And I don't want to push anybody or do anything that anyone's uncomfortable with. But if they want to think about it, part of what we can talk about is while you're thinking about it, let's have the insurance company think about you, and let's solidify the pricing structure so we can see if this strategy would even work for you. Okay. All right, let me flop back here. All right, so case study number 2. This is a 70-year-old couple, not just a 70-year-old female. And they're doing the exact same thing, putting in the same $10,000. But guess what? Now we can use second to die structures. So everything I talked about before just got that much better. We can buy $498 at preferred and $424 at standard. Okay, so look at these internal rates of return. Now we're talking. I mean, this is age 95, you guys. This is where I get so excited. I mean, I see George laughing because I just giggle like a kid. I can't believe sometimes how good these numbers are, honestly. I'm biased. I'm an insurance person. I can't believe how good these numbers are. You're talking about a 25-year internal rate of return of 4.97%. That is going to outperform the equity portfolio for these people that you're targeting 6% on a taxable basis. Okay, so let's just consider whether we should use this. And then this shows up in cash. And not only that, you can tell them exactly what this pile of cash is worth. We know exactly what it's worth. It's not predicated on future performance. This is exactly what it's going to be worth. It's going to be worth $498. And we're going to have to contribute exactly $10,000. What we don't know is how many times we have to contribute it. And that's where these internal rates of return come in. Let me show you that illustration, especially at more advanced ages. All right, so here is the preferred 70/70. This one is Prudential. Okay. Here's our 25-year return right here, 4.97%. Okay. Our 30-year return, they're age 99, 3.1. 3.1. Okay. This is guaranteed for longer. If they live to 109, which is possible. I mean, the reason that a lifetime guarantee is 120 is because that's the actuarial age by which everyone will be gone, and that's considered to be a lifetime guarantee. So I would submit to you, if these clients put this in place and they live 40 years and pass away, we can all agree that they should have put this money somewhere else. I agree with that, with hindsight. But meanwhile, they did return all of their dollars with a 1% return on a non-taxable basis. So I don't believe they got crushed. I believe we shouldn't have put the money in here in hindsight, but I don't think they got crushed. And I'm curious if you would think they got crushed. And the reality is there's probably a 90% chance or more that they're going to pass away before age 95, which, by the way, is why a lot of you are running your financial plans to age 95 as well. So this asset shouldn't be ignored, in my opinion. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip the standard one because it's a little redundant now because I gave you the numbers here. Standard, that 25-year number comes down to 3.86. 3.86 I still think is a stellar number for a 25-year return for this kind of structure. Okay. So now we move into cash value, right? So if it's for cash accumulation, how do we bring that up? The way that I like to bring it up is referencing the Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. Are you aware that the majority of Fortune 500 companies are utilizing specially designed insurance contracts to fund their non-qualified deferred compensation plans? Are you aware of that? And by the way, do you think that these large corporations, are you the advisors, by the way, are you aware that the majority of Fortune 500 companies are utilizing accumulation strategies for their executives right now? Okay. They're doing this not because they love what insurance is, but they love what it does. And in that corporate setting, what it does is, first of all, it allows them to pick and choose or discriminate who gets that non-qualified account because it's not subject to ERISA rules. So that's number one. Number two, there's no 59.5 rule. So we don't have to wait till 59.5 to get our dollars. Number three, there's no RMD rule. We don't have to start taking distributions out either. Okay. And then the fourth reason is that we can take money from our cash value on a tax-free basis by taking our basis and then engaging in policy loans. And so companies have been utilizing this for a long time. And what we do is we take those same strategies and we utilize them with our clients on an everyday basis. Would you like to learn more about how that might work for you? Right? That's sort of how I might get into that kind of conversation. Would you contribute more to your qualified plan if you were allowed to? We talked about this. If you were eligible for a Roth IRA, would you contribute? How do you feel about future taxes? All of these things feed into why a funding vehicle called an insurance contract should be considered. And none of this ends up being talked about because you go, do you want life insurance? No, I don't want it. Okay, good, because I didn't want to talk about it either. And then we're out of there, if we even asked them. So we're just ignoring this so often. And I don't mean to indict you, and maybe you aren't ignoring it, but if you are, I'm hoping to give you some language so you can start getting into these conversations. Now, by the way, if you want to get into these conversations, but you're uncomfortable getting into these conversations, you can bring me in and I'll have the conversation with you and for you. Okay, so in order to do business with us, you certainly do not have to work with me on a joint work basis. Okay, George can take care of you very well. But to the extent you want help with the clients, George named Nathan up there, right? To the extent that you want me with you, I will absolutely do that. And in fact, that's what my main job is working side by side with advisors and talking directly to clients on strategies like this. And what you'll find is what you're hearing from me now is very, very similar to what you'll be hearing if I have the opportunity to work with you and be in a client meeting. So your choice. We would have to split some commissions if we do that. So we'd want to have that hammered out ahead of time if we were to go that route. Okay. So I would suggest that we consider that. So here's a case study. So this is a real case that we worked on with a 38-year-old female. She was a preferred non-smoker, same $10,000 a year of contribution, but she was just going to contribute it to age 65 because we wanted to take income afterwards. So we illustrated a 5.91% return. We were in a product with an S&P cap of 9.5%. So that's a point-to-point cap, 9.5%. This product actually moved down to 9%. It's not that germane, but it will be in a minute when I show you my colleague's case in a minute. But what I want you to see here is we're assuming a 5.91% return. But we can get anywhere between 0 and 9.5 inside that index for this year, right? And we're assuming a 5.91. We go out to age 65, and she's got an internal rate of return on her cash value of 5.39%. Okay, so what you're talking about there is you're talking about 62 basis points is the cost drag. That's all the cost drag was at age 65. Once we paid for all of the insurance and they have this tax-free bucket available to them, it only costs them 61 basis points or whatever that math is. Did I do the math wrong? Because now I have 0.53. So in either event, you definitely see that concept. So at age 65, she's contributed $290,000. She's got $701,000 in cash value and $1.1 million of death benefit. So let me show you this illustration. Yeah, this thing just takes over my screen, so I have to move these things over. I apologize. Technology is a beautiful thing. All right, here we go. So put in $10,000 in year one. At the end of year one, we have a policy value of $8,200. Rod, you said this thing was good. You said we're going to get 5.9. That's garbage. We put 10 grand in, we only have 8,200, and in fact, my surrender value is 0. You need to understand this. You need to show your clients. This is a horrible first year issue. and it's front weighted in fees and commissions. And the worst part about insurance for accumulation is the first few years, which is why we really need to have a 15-year commitment or greater, or I don't believe the numbers work. Okay. So we effectively have lost all of our money in year one if we walk away, because we walk away with zero. Okay. I want to point your attention to right here, somewhere between year 8 and 9, where we just now start to get a positive return on our dollars. So let's look at year 10. So we put $100,000 in over 10 years. Now we just now have $110,000. We have all of our money plus a $10,000 gain. We've returned a 1.8% return. So if you're tracking me so far, this is not good. So we're earning 5.92 every year, but the cost of insurance has soaked up all of it except 1.8%. Now, by the way, if this client happens to die within 10 years, we have these death benefits, and we have these internal rates of return here on this last column. Right? If he dies within 10 years, she dies within 10 years, we have a 30% return or higher. Right? But this is for accumulation, and she's probably not going to die. So this number is kind of like, now we're getting into the green, if you will. Well, let's take a look here. At age 65, the last year she contributes, you see here 0 and 66 because she's not going to contribute after that. Well, here then she's put 290,000 in. Here's our 701,000 in cash value, and that's representing a 5.39% return. And that 5.39% return can be accessed on a tax-free basis. How? By first taking out our $290,000 basis. So many people will take this pile of cash, this, we'll call it 700,000 of cash, and we want to turn it into income, just like it was any other cash. And you'd say, well, how much can we take out of this? And you'll put together an income plan based upon what you're going to take out of the 401k, what we're getting for Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we can take out the first 290,000 without any taxes. In so doing, we reduce our death benefit dollar for every dollar we take out. And then we can take a policy loan for the rest. And this contract and almost every contract we use has a zero net cost loan that allows you to borrow at an interest rate, and then they credit you the exact same interest rate back, effectively causing a wash. So there's no interest charged effectively on a net basis. Even if you did pay 3 or 4 or 5% interest, it would be comparable to ordinary income tax rates. And depending where those ordinary income tax rates are, that would be very favorable to pay interest even if you had to. And so this is a beautiful structure, one that we placed, one that I like very much. In fact, we did the spouse here as well in a similar way, or we're intending to do so here soon. Now, here is the example I want to give you. So this was a colleague of mine, the exact same product I just showed you, okay? Exact same product, okay? The old 7702 rate versus the new 7702. So Symetra repriced the product I just showed you into a new product. And what I'm showing you here is a different client that isn't mine that had the old and the new. And I want to show you how the new just got that much better. And I'm going to try not to geek out on you, okay, because I can't believe how good this is. This lady did get super preferred rates. This is a real case that's happening right this second, okay? So she applied under the old 7702 rates with a cap of 9.5. So since she applied, that cap has gone down to 9%. Now that's not specifically to the new product. Even the old product has a 9% cap. And I'm sure you guys understand that cap rates can and do change, and they will continue to change through the lifetime of this contract. So we were assuming a 5.92% return. In the new, we're assuming 5.7, and that's a reflection of this cap. And it's really the number that compliance allows us to illustrate, right? So now we're getting a modestly lower return than the 5.92. This lady was putting in $50,000 a year for 10 years and stopping. So my words for that is she's repositioning $500,000 from her portfolio into this asset class at $50,000 a year. Same $50,000 here. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the old product, this $50,000, we went to the IRS through our insurance company's software and said, IRS, if I put $50,000 a year for 10 years, $500,000 into a contract for a 53-year-old female, what's the minimum amount of death benefit you're going to make me have? And that answer was 1.197. So that's the amount of coverage you have to accommodate $50,000 a year for 10 years. We said, okay. Well, in the new product, because we can put more in, look at what this new product is. The IRS is only requiring us to buy a $754,000 policy. This is really good because all of those costs are predicated upon what they call the net amount at risk. And the net amount at risk is the difference between the death benefit and the cash value. And if we're supporting a smaller death benefit, then that means we have a smaller net amount at risk, which means we have less charges, which means that more of our money is going into the investment account, which means that our net return is better. Okay. Now, what we lose is we lose these death benefits. So look, I have a 10-year, over 10 years, over 20 years on the death benefit, and over 30 years. So clearly, if we have a death benefit need, we need to pay attention. And by the way, we might have a term policy on the side of this for death benefit. But if we're focused on accumulation, we want the lowest policy possible. If I could get this to 500,000, I would. Okay, I would. But this is the number we need to be. But here's the key. Look what happens to our cash values. Okay, over 10 years, we gain almost another $40,000 over 10 years doing this. Okay, over 20 years, what do we gain there? We gain almost $100,000, right? Over 30 years, look at this, the difference between 1.68 and 1.92. So this new 7702 is making these more efficient than they have ever been. Here's the IRR in 20 years on the old, and here's on the new. We picked up another 50 bips. If she can wait 30 years, look at this, 5.39% net on a 5.7% gross. Remember I told you about the geeking out? This is the part. I grossed 5.7. They charged me, they paid commission to the rep, they paid my nurse, they paid my doctor, they paid administrative costs, they paid insurance costs, they paid all of these costs. And after all of those costs were done, what those costs were is the difference between 5.39 and 5.7, 31 basis points. 31 basis points. I cannot believe how good that is. Okay. And so, in my opinion, the accumulation strategy has never been stronger, not only because of what I'm showing you right now, but because taxes are going up. Okay. And those two things together, for your best clients, they need to consider whether they have one of these. I just put another IUL in place on my life in December on the old rules. I'm not upset about it, but boy, I sure wish I was put that new one in place today under the new rules. So I might have to do another one eventually, but like anyone, you know, I got multiple goals and multiple buckets as well. But even for you, the advisor, you might want to consider something like this for yourself. So you can certainly reach out to George or I on that basis. All right, it's 1:54. So I want to show you just a couple other things and then we'll wrap up. We have a couple of pieces that we can send out to you if you reach out to me or George on this. I have a couple of white papers here that were written by Charlie Gipple, who's a friend of mine, and he does a very good job of making a case for IUL in this case. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. So a lot of what I describe to you is the value. You know, people drive expensive cars when inexpensive cars can get you from point A to point B. Why do they do that? Perceived value. So we need to understand what that is. Got a second white paper making the case for life insurance as an asset class, which is similar, and again, a lot of what we described. These read real well. If you'd like them, please reach out to us. Okay. We also have a insurance advisor toolbox that I want to just preview for you in the last couple of minutes that we have. So this toolbox is designed to have everything you need to intentionally integrate insurance into your practice. What this is it's an interactive PDF that has a bunch of supporting documents in the cloud. And in here, you can go in and we have this situated whereby we have a tab for identification. So again, what we teach is intentionally integrating insurance, and in order to do so, we have to identify who to talk to. I just gave you two good identifiers today, and we have others based on other strategies that we have. Okay. So how do we identify? We've got profiling tools, we've got fact finders, we've got videos, and priority checklists, etc. There's a lot of material in here to identify opportunities. Once we identify opportunities, then how do we position them? Which is, what kind of conversation do we have? So I've got review scripts and discovery scripts, maturing CD scripts. We've got different recordings. I've, over the years, done a lot of webinars and recordings. We have a bunch of these in a coaching call library. Okay, so there is a number of pieces that might be meaningful to you. So once we're talking about positioning, then how do we implement? Well, how do we get business done? And so we have links to our e-tickets, et cetera, and other quote request forms to get things done. We have an introduction tab. We believe in joint work. Certainly, I believe in joint work. That's how I earn most of my living. And so we have different people available to you based upon what it is that you might want. Then we have our due diligence material. Who are we? Where's our website? What are our carriers, our guiding principles, et cetera, plus our partners. We use National Benefits Group in the BOLI and COLI space, bank-owned life insurance, corporate-owned life insurance. We use Newman Long-Term Care in the long-term care space. They're like the experts of the experts, right? Secura Consultants is our disability insurance team. And so all of this to say that we have all of these resources available to you so that we can help you effectively integrate insurance into your practice. So any of the tools that I showed today, we are happy to show you. Almost every one of those tools is inside the toolbox as well. We've got that historical tax chart, my term versus perm chart, the 2 white papers, where are your assets, and that toolbox as we mentioned. Okay. In order to really get these strategies implemented, what I've found is that you should identify 1 or 2 or 3 or as many as five clients, call me or George. I've got a guy, I've got a gal, and now we're talking about them. So short list. We're not going to go talk to them right away. We're going to talk about them. Tell me what you know about them. What have you done for them? What do you know about what they care about? What do you know about their life and their health, etc. Right? And by the way, consider using yourself as an example. Sometimes that's the absolute best way to learn, is to apply it to your situation. And then once again, to the extent that you're not comfortable doing this yourself, I'll be happy to do it right next to you. So what now? Again, let's short list those. Reach out to George or myself. Our next coaching call is going to be on Thursday, April 15th. I'm going to be discussing how to appropriately position long-term care insurance inside of a retirement portfolio plan. It's really retirement portfolio protection is what I believe that positioning is. And similar today, I will walk you through how to have that conversation. I will share with you the most common 3 or 4 different designs by which to implement long-term care and hopefully bring some value to you. You've also noticed that Jeff is sending out these Always Be Learnings. We're sending those out on the 3rd and 4th Thursdays, forgive me. That's 3rd or 4th Thursdays, not Tuesdays. And those are just kind of ideas. Again, generally I'm writing those, but trying to get you to open your eyes a little bit further and get better language to have better conversations. You're going to hear conversations, because I believe that's where the success is relative to insurance planning. So with that, here's George's contact information. Feel free to reach out to him if you need some quotes or working on a case. My contact information here. You can reach out to me similarly. Certainly reach out to me if you would like to do some joint work. And with that, it is 2 o'clock, so I am formally done. I will stick around for a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions or comments, but you can feel free to exit the call with no shame, as I am committed to starting and ending on time. So with that, does anybody have any questions or comments for me or George? Okay. George, any last words from you?
Well, no, but just to bookend the front part of your conversation about when a death benefit is desirable, don't be afraid of a MEC. In that case, we got $1 million, we turned into 3 with a front load investment, and that client wasn't the least bit concerned about MEC limits or whatever, because it's all about wealth transfer. So again, here, as we finished, it's all about income and not having or being tax advantaged. So I think you make a great presentation with those kind of polar opportunities, and it's great to work with you all on these kind of
That's a great comment, George. And to MEC, I should have distinguished that. So a MEC contract still pays an income tax-free death benefit. So when we're dealing with a wealth transfer concern, we generally don't care that it becomes a MEC. And in fact, it might be better if it becomes a MEC, because if it's a MEC, what that really means is that we've got more cash value than we have death benefit, and we violated the rules, which is good, which means my net amount at risk is smaller, and the death benefit is still payable income tax free either way, so we haven't lost that.
And sometimes surprisingly, that client wanted to come with a full lump sum, but it actually built $500,000 more in death benefit by spreading it over 6 years.
That's right.
Just the way companies handle money and,
Correct.
Handle the risk. So there's some nuance. I don't want me to end on that, but to me, that's fun to satisfy the wants, I guess, as you put it.
That's
right?
great. Thanks, George. How about you, Jeff? You got any final words for us? We'll wrap up.
No, it's a good conversation. I've had success with LERPs myself, so
Good.
so if anybody has any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them too.
Beautiful.
Definitely utilize the structure, and hopefully we'll find some more.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Last call for any other questions or comments. Okay, well then I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next month. And thank you so much. Please reach out to George or myself, and we look forward to earning your business. Make it a great day.
Thanks, Rod.
All right.
Thanks, Rod.
Bye-bye.
Excellent.